Mission.
Hi, this is Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for watching my channel and watching GunGuyTV and for all of the support that you give us. I really do appreciate it. One thing I want you to look at before we get into this interview with Sam, real quick, is the one of the sponsors we have, which is Second Call Defense. I mentioned Second Call Defense to you for a couple of reasons, not least of which is it's the program that I use to defend me in court if I ever have to use a firearm to defend myself. They're going to bail me out of jail, and they're going to provide money for an attorney and that kind of stuff. And it's a foundation, so they provide the money all up front, and then I don't have to pay it back, rather than reimbursing me later after I've successfully defended myself. Now, there are some other companies out there that are very good. There's USCCA. There's also NRA Carry Guard, which is very good. But my understanding is NRA Carry Guard's having some trouble in California because they're going after them for this or that. And so I don't know. It wasn't allowed to be sold in New York because New York did the same thing. These right and left coast people go after the NRA right and left. And so you may find that that's the case in California as well. But one way or the other, I do want to suggest to you Second Call Defense. Check them out. Check out which one works best for you. If you decide to use Second Call Defense, I ask you to use our link. They are a sponsor of GunGuyTV, and so it does help us out just a little bit. So I would certainly appreciate that. Sam Paredes, my friend. Really glad to see you. It's been too long since you've been on the show.
It's great to be here, Joel. Always a pleasure and an honor to talk with you and to share the latest and greatest news affecting the Second Amendment here in California.
And some of it's latest, and some of it's greatest, and some of it's not so good. But that's okay. Yeah. We're still fighting the good fight. By the way, I'll tell you right now, I sent this to Sam. This is what we're going to talk about today. And, he's a brave man. He still came on the show. I don't understand why you do that. First and foremost, Sam, before we do anything else, I want to ask you, you have a PAC now. So what's new at Gun Owners of California?
Well, Gun Owners of California Campaign Committee is actually the organization that we started off with back in 1974, 1975, when Gun Owners of California was created. We started out as a political action committee, and then Gun Owners of California Inc., the parent organization or the umbrella organization, is the one that's the membership group. But our political action committee has been around for a long time. And actually, the history is quite amazing. We're very active in opposing people who even considered proposing anti-gun legislation by funding challenging candidates, sometimes in the primary. And general elections, and we had a very good track record. From 75 to 1982, Gun Owners of California Campaign Committee actually gave more money to political candidates than the Republican Party did. Now, Senator H.L. Richardson, our founder and chairman, who set up our structure and who helped us select who our targets were, the legislature got really upset with him for taking out so many of their friends and causing so much havoc in the Capitol anytime somebody considered an anti-gun law, that they changed the rules. In the past, we were able to provide resources to political candidates, sometimes as much as half of the political dollars that were used by some candidates came from Gun Owners of California Campaign Committee. Well, in order to prevent us from doing that, they actually changed the laws and limited the amount of money that we can raise from an individual and limited the amount of money that we can give to a candidate. Of course, they exempted unions and other types of organizations, of which we were not one of those organizations, in order to limit our influence and participation in politics. So at that point, Gun Owners of California, Inc. became far more impactful in that as a grassroots organization. When we can send money, we send troops, we send notified voters, and we participate in elections. We've had to adapt, improvise, and overcome, as the Marines say, in order to stay active and effective in politics. So people haven't heard about GOCCC for a long time, but we are here and we are active and we are participating in elections here in California.
So let me make sure I understand that the PAC allows you then to accept contributions that would have been legal at one point, but then aren't because they changed the laws, and now you have a PAC that allows you to accept larger contributions. Is that how that works?
Yeah, there's a limit on any individual contribution that we can receive. When in the past we had contributed as much as $70,000 to a campaign for assembly, let's say, back when it only cost $150,000 to run an election campaign in the assembly, or $200,000 to run a Senate campaign. Now it's in the millions. And the laws that were changed limit us to basically small donations. I mean, we can't give more than several $1,000s to any one candidate. So that limits our ability to help them in their campaign. So what we do now is we do independent expenditures, something where we are unlimited in the resources that we raise and the resources that we spend. And in concentrating on grassroots participation in political action, we found that to be very effective in winning critical races.
So this is follow the money. This is a way to be able to be effective politically by contributing money where you need and receiving money as you need to help some of these folks get elected or get reelected, as the case might be. Is that essentially what a PAC does? Essentially.
Now, because of the limitations, we can give a contribution of only several $1,000s that wouldn't even cover the cost of one statewide mailing or district-wide mailing for an assembly candidate. That's kind of a limiting factor. So instead of giving, $3,000 or $4,000 to a candidate, us spending those resources in grassroots operation and member communication or independent expenditures is far more helpful than giving, a few $1,000s to a candidate who that won't cover, a portion of their bills. It makes candidates work a lot harder to raise money, that's for sure, but it makes it more interesting in how we spend money. And we've decided that we had to change our mode of operation in order to continue to be effective in elections.
Well, this, I think, also helps us fight the battle that ensues when you have, there was a headline in the news the other day that there's a kind of a cabal, for lack of a better term, of billionaires who are now donating a lot of money, presumably to PACs of their own or creating PACs of their own, to see if they can help the Democrats win the midterm elections and capture a lot of these House seats and Senate seats. And I'm not a billionaire, and neither are you, as far as I know. So this is one way that the average person then, it seems to me, can help battle those billionaires, because while they may have, $200 million to contribute, I've got my $100, or I've got my $200, or I've got my $50. But if we've got, 5 or 10 million of us with $100, we've essentially we're kind of canceling them out. At least to some degree, we're allowing the fight to continue. Is that basically how this works, or?
That is exactly how it works. As you well know, the average donor to Gun Owners of California or any of the other political organizations that support the Second Amendment is about $35 a year. And if we had thousands and thousands of people who can donate $100, well, that would increase our ability to participate. But we have even more thousands of people who can contribute $35, and we accumulate those dollars and turn them into effective political. So that's what we do.
Well, Sam, you know what I'm going to do today? Because I try to set the example. Today, I'm going to write you a check for $100 and send it to you. I'm already a member. We may have lost Sam here. Are you still with me, Sam, or did we lose you? No, you still with me?
I am. A call. I am here.
Okay.
I apologize for that.
No, that's okay. This is the technology is wonderful when it works.
It is. I decided that it would be good to try using my iPhone because the camera is so much better on the iPhone than it is on my my laptop.
It's awesome.
So
the only problem is then you get a phone call.
I should have turned on my block calls for this.
That's okay. We'll know what happens if you disappear again. That's not a problem. I was going to say today I'm going to mail you a check for $100, and we'll see if I don't have a lot of money, but I can do that. For the first time in my life, I'm a member of a lot of stuff, as you know, and I'm a member of Gun Owners of California, as a matter of fact. And Frank, and let me just talk to you if you're watching. If you're not a member of Gun Owners of California, you need to be. So I'll put the link in the description. So you should be. They do tremendous work here in California, and it's a great credit to them. As a matter of fact, there is a news story, just as kind of an aside here. There is a news story I saw on Reuters that said, it was entitled this. I thought it was great. Local gun groups flex muscle in state politics. Well, yeah, you think? Every state has local gun groups and state gun groups, and certainly California does. We have, among others, that are awesome, Gun Owners of California, so we should contribute there. But I was telling you, for the first time in my life, I've actually started contributing directly to political campaigns, and I find that they really appreciate it when you do that. And I don't have, I can't contribute thousands of dollars, but every little contribution helps, and that helps sort of, as I said before, that helps kind of balance out this billionaire cabal of ultra left-wing billionaires if the little guys all band together and start contributing. Listen, I wanted to mention get a couple of things out from you. There were some things that the sheriff signed, not the sheriff. I'll talk about the sheriff in a minute, about the San Diego County Sheriff. There were some things that the governor signed, Governor Moonbeam, and some things that he didn't or he vetoed. And I'm a little screwed up where that's concerned. Can you help me out and clarify those? Where are we now?
Sure can. The governor signed, once the legislature ends, the governor has 30 days to deal with all of the legislation that was sent to him, either to sign it or veto it, or to allow it to become law without his signature after 30 days. Gun issues are something that Governor Jerry Brown has always spent time on. He has been schizophrenic, sometimes wisely supporting the Second Amendment, and other times inexplicably signing legislation that is extremely detrimental to the Second Amendment. And this year was no different. Unlike Solomon from the Bible, who threatened to cut the baby in half in order to use his wisdom to decide who the rightful mother was, Jerry Brown happily cuts the baby in half, gives half of it to both sides, and says, well, if everybody's mad at me, I guess I'm doing the right thing. So he did that again this year. He signed into law AB 2103 by Assemblyman Gloria. And what this does is it increases regulations and restrictions on the process of getting a concealed weapons permit. It requires that 8 hours be taught. And right now the law says between 8 and 16 hours. But his law now says that it's a minimum of 8 hours and basically leaves it open to an unlimited number of hours in order for people to get their initial concealed weapons permit, the number of hours that somebody has to participate in a class. And secondly, what it does is it requires live fire shooting. Now, people will say, well, people are getting a CCW. Live fire should be a component of that application. And you know what? It always has been. There is not a CCW instructor in the state of California who would not offer live fire training to any of its students that they deem necessary to have it. Many instructors have law enforcement officers who have separated and are not retired technically, and don't have privileges as a retired law enforcement officer, or separated members from the military, special forces people. For me as an instructor to require a retired Navy SEAL to show that he can shoot a gun at 7 yards and 10 yards and 15 yards and is ludicrous. But the fact of the matter is that many sheriffs actually require a shooting component, but it is up to their discretion. And so far, the wisdom that our issuing law enforcement officers have shown has been flawless. There has never been a situation in the state of California where somebody who, using their CCW to the gun with a legal CCW, has ever been charged or accused of not having enough training. It has never happened since CCWs have been issued back in the 1920s. So it's not an issue. This is an effort by Assemblyman Gloria, who in testimony said, I'm familiar with guns. I was on a junior rifle team in junior high school or something like that. We asked him if he's familiar with handguns. He's never taken a handgun safety class. He doesn't own any handguns. He's not trained in handguns. He knows nothing about them, but he deemed that it was important for him to pass legislation that would make it, in essence, more cumbersome to get a CCW in the state of California. Now, sheriffs are now going to be required to establish a standard for shooting for their own jurisdictions, and they're going to have to publish that standard for public scrutiny. What they've done is they've just opened up a window for lawsuits and more legislation. To think that they were actually trying to make things safer in California is just ludicrous. And you should have seen the testimony, Joel.
Well,
Members,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say
No.
I've been teaching the class for, I don't know, a long time for the state, for San Diego County, and I taught the course for Orange County for a number of years. And then I've had a concealed carry permit in California issued by the San Diego County Sheriff. I think I got the first one in 1989 or 1990, and then for about a year and a half, I let it go, and I went back and got it again. So I've had it for, I don't know, what is that, 37 years or something like that, 38 years. And the sheriff has always, in San Diego County and Orange County, they've always had a minimum shooting requirement. When I say minimum, I don't mean necessarily that the shooting was minimalized. I mean, they had a minimum that you had to reach in order to carry a firearm. It's actually, in San Diego, it's actually increased now, but it used to be pretty simple. It's still pretty simple, but I mean, it's increased now beyond that. I'm not aware of a single sheriff in the state of California that didn't have a shooting component, or a single concealed carry instructor that didn't require their students to actually hit what they were shooting at. But I am aware of the fact that without question, nationwide, not just in the state of California, that people who have concealed carry permits anywhere in the nation are by far the most law-abiding people in the nation, without
no
question and without comparison. And that is that's not an emotional statement on my part. That is an absolute fact.
That you're absolutely correct. CCW holders are conscientious. They pay attention to the law, and they respect that privilege that is granted to them by the government to carry a gun, even though you and I both don't believe that it's a privilege, that it is a right. But under the system that we have right now, CCW holders are very serious about that. They train, they obey the law, and they don't break other laws. The number of CCWs that have been overturned nationwide is infinitesimal. And in particular, for the misuse of a CCW, it is counted in less than 1%. Yes, there are people who have lost their CCWs because they've done something else that was dumb. They got a DUI, or they are in a divorce and they got into a spat and they lost their CCWs. But for misuse, it doesn't happen nationwide, and especially here in the state of California.
Well, what's interesting, too, is I've had, over the years, I've had a lot of students for concealed carry, getting a lot more of them now because the San Diego County Sheriff is actually issuing more permits, which is a good thing. He's moved in the right direction a little bit. He's not where he needs to be, but he's going in the right direction. I'm very grateful for that because as far as I'm concerned, the more honest, law-abiding, trained, armed people there are on the street, the safer we all are. But I very, very, very seldom, I would say 1 in 200 or 300, I very seldom have somebody come who's been approved for a concealed carry permit who doesn't shoot well. I mean, it doesn't happen. Every once in a while I have somebody, but even those people shoot well. They just don't shoot as well as I'd like them to, or as well as they'd like to. And they're generally asking me, how can I get more training? What else should I do? And those are the kind of questions we're getting asked. I don't have people who buy a gun this morning, get a concealed carry permit, and have never fired a handgun before. That just doesn't, at least in my experience, that simply
my
doesn't happen.
experience too. We share the exact same experience. I have had some students who show up, and our sheriff requires us to do the safety check on the firearm that's going to be placed on their CCW list. And there have been a couple of occasions when somebody brought a brand new gun, still wrapped in the wax paper, dripping with cosmoline, and they say, okay, we're going to take this gun out and we're going to put it through its paces, and you're going to show me that you are familiar with shooting this gun. We'll do some additional training in order for you to be very familiar with this gun, and I'm going to make sure that you are fully capable with this gun. And that's what all CCW instructors do in the state of California. They've always done it that way. But the legislature saw fit that, we have to ensure through statutes that CCW holders are held to the highest standards and are very safe. Well, a perfect safety record cannot be improved upon. So,
well, that's exactly right.
So that was one of the bills. Another bill that he wisely vetoed was SB 221 by
Wait a minute,
Senator
the governor actually vetoed something that was a gun bill.
Yeah, it was a bill that he's vetoed twice.
Okay.
That has been vetoed twice before. This was a bill that would have put a ban on gun shows at the California Cow Palace, which is a state-owned facility. So that means that you and I, who don't live in South San Francisco, or actually own that facility. They had gun shows there for years and years and years. There hasn't been any accident. No laws have been broken. But because the city of San Francisco, South San Francisco, and Daly City don't like guns, they hate the fact that a gun show was taking place within their community. And our argument was, listen, you folks have banned the ability for gun stores to exist in your communities. The gun show is the only legal place where residents of your communities, of which there are many, who want to avail themselves of a firearm, can go to a legal gun show and legally buy a gun, just as if they were buying it from a dealer. 10-day waiting periods, background checks, taxes, fees, all of that stuff has to be complied with. And like I said, there's no indication that guns from the Cow Palace Gun Show have ever been used in the commission of a crime, especially in the Bay Area. So the governor said, you know what, this facility is owned by the state, and the fair board that runs that, they're the ones with the responsibility of deciding what can and cannot be done at the gun show. So he wisely vetoed that bill.
Well, they're really going after gun shows in general. Obviously, they've been going after the Del Mar gun show, and that didn't go as well as we'd like it to. And then now there's a battle of sorts over places to shoot that are public lands down in the south end of south part of San Diego County, right around where the South Bay Rod and Gun Club is. There was a ordinance or something that was voted in the other day, or along the process anyway, by the San Diego Board of Supervisors, County Board of Supervisors. This is just a battle that's happening everywhere to shut down. When you add up let's close down the areas where you can shoot as much as possible. Let's make it as difficult to buy ammunition as we possibly can. Let's shut down the gun shows wherever possible. Let's make it more expensive and more difficult to get a concealed weapons permit. All they are is just making it harder and harder and harder. And let's make it harder and harder to hunt, and limit the places where you can hunt, and limit the ammunition you can use, and make it more. I mean, for crying out loud! For example, I'll show you this. For example, I have my trusty rusty Mini 14 here because I'm getting it all ready to go. Just citing it in later on today, probably, or tomorrow, because I'm God willing, I've got an opportunity to go hunt javelina, put myself in for a tag, and out in Arizona, and I start looking at the Arizona regs for hunting, and I'm going, they're this long.
That's correct.
You know what I mean?
That's correct.
I look for the California ones. I was like, my gosh, you got to have a law degree to figure out what you can do and what you can't do. This is the first time I've hunted Arizona. So I'm going with a buddy of mine who invited me, and get my little 223 ready and knock a javelina over, and we'll go out and do it in Arizona. But California has become so difficult in every respect that I know this is just their plan to just make it harder and harder and harder. And, they can't take the right away, but they can make it more difficult to exercise it. That seems to me what's happening. And I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were talking about
No, you're not
legislation,
interrupting me. You get the gold star for the day because you hit the nail on the head so hard you drove it all the way down to the bottom. The legislature, they realized, and the anti-gunners, that they tried to take away all of the guns and they failed. They couldn't do it because of the Second Amendment, and even the general public would not allow them to ban all handguns back in 1982 with the No on Proposition 15 campaign. But so they changed their tactics. We can't ban the guns, so we're going to make it more difficult for them to buy them, use them, transport them, practice with them, hunt with them. And by doing that, they feel that would create enough impediments so that fewer people would get involved into the gun culture and exercise their Second Amendment rights to purchase firearms. And now that they're going into CCWs and controlling them, they are this is just the first step. And my guess is that they're going to try to do everything they can to discourage people from protecting themselves. And that's the bottom line, Joel. You're absolutely correct.
Well, and I interrupted your process a little bit. You were going through the California laws that were signed, and I interrupted you. Are there more that you wanted to talk about?
Yes. SB 1100 by Senator Portantino. The governor signed this bill, and this is probably the most unconstitutional bill that was signed this year. What it does is it says that anyone under 21 years of age cannot buy any gun at all, no shotguns, no rifles. So 18-year-olds who this year and beginning January 1st, who would go out and buy a shotgun to shoot trap or to hunt birds or something like that, or to protect their own homes, will no longer be allowed to do so. That the minimum age to purchase any gun will be 21 years of age. There will be a lawsuit that will be filed against this. There's no question about it. We have youngsters that are as young as 17 years of age who enlist in the military. They're trained in the use of all manner of modern rifles and armament. They're sent off to protect this country in foreign lands, and then they can come home and not have the ability to purchase a gun to protect themselves in their own home here in the state of California. It doesn't make sense. Now, no matter what you think of the Second Amendment and the drafting on it, the militia was specifically mentioned in the Second Amendment. Under federal law, anyone over the age of 17 is a member of the militia. And this bill specifically bans federally recognized members of the militia from acquiring firearms and in order to exercise their Second Amendment rights. We think that is wholly unconstitutional. And there is no indication that 18-year-olds or 19-year-olds are legally buying guns and using them in the commission of a crime. So this is an odious bill. We're going to fight it all the way through the court system in order to get a return. A lawsuit was filed against a similar law that was passed in the state of Florida.
Well, and now we've got a Supreme Court justice, a couple of new ones, and perhaps they'll actually start hearing some Second Amendment cases. That would be nice. You brought up a couple of things about this particular law, which I find interesting, and that is the militia. I think people don't understand. Some don't. Some do. The term militia is bandied about in a negative way because we have small militias, and they're militia groups, and people say, well, they're militia groups. They're a terrorist militia group, or they're this or that or the other thing. The militia, as I understand it, is essentially every able-bodied person above a certain age, and they're there to be called up by the state or to help defend the state, or called up by the federal government to help defend the country in the event that is needed. And in times past, when we were in wars and and a lot of folks went off to war, and there really weren't people to guard certain facilities, for example, infrastructure type facilities, water, sewer, electricity, and those kind of things that are vital for the country to protect them against some attack on our own soil. Militia stepped up to fill those roles, and that's what the militia is for. So when you have a federal law that says that the militia, quote unquote, is everybody above this age, then those folks are there to be called up in the extreme instance in which they need to help. That's what the militia essentially is. Now, they do have small groups that they call militias, and different groups get together and train and that kind of stuff, and that's fine too. But the militia, as it's defined in the Second Amendment, applies more to the concept that I'm describing than it does to that. At least that's my understanding. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you are absolutely correct. The Supreme Court in the past has defined the militia as two components, the organized militia and the unorganized militia, and that is every law-abiding citizen above the age of 17. And that means male and female. Now, had this law been in place during World War II, maybe Admiral Yamamoto would have changed his mind about attacking the West Coast, because when he said we will never attack the West Coast because every American will be behind every blade of grass with their own gun defending their country. If that were not the case, maybe that would have been different. So this has historical significance and is extremely important. And these rights, I mean, an 18-year-old can vote. That is a huge responsibility that has life and death consequences. They can drive, they can do all manner of things. They are adults. They're recognized by the state and the federal government as adults. And here in California, the legislature, the anti-gunners in particular, are saying, yeah, you're kind of a semi-adult because you cannot be responsible enough to legally purchase a firearm and use it for your home defense or recreation or hunting or anything like that. And you certainly cannot be a serious member of the militia if you don't have the right to be able to arm yourself in order to participate if called upon.
Yeah, if you're out there with a butter knife, it's not going to help, that's for sure. As a practical matter, because we're kind of stuck with this law this is the problem, one of the problems with states like California. They can easily pass the laws, and then it takes years for us to get them through court to get them thrown out again. And it's just, they can pass them as fast as they want, and it takes us a tremendous amount of money and years to make them go away. I wrote myself a note as you were speaking, and it just struck me that at one point, I believe it was the law that a 21-year-old in the state could not buy a handgun. However, that a parent or grandparent could buy it and then gift it to them, and they could register it in their own name. Does that still apply where this law is concerned? So let's say, for example, I have a child who's 18 years old and they're going to go to college in the state of California, and I want them to have a firearm at home. They can't go buy it 18, 19 years old. Can I buy it and give it to them, and then they can legally possess it or legally have it registered in their name? How does that work? How does that work? What's the law where that's concerned?
Joel, first of all, you should know that I am not an attorney. And,
I do know that, yes.
I have opinions and observations, and I've been around long enough to see all of the anti-gun laws that have been written into our California statute since 1980, which constitutes the vast majority of all of the laws. That being said, what happens is this law is going to put all of that into some sort of legal jeopardy because technically under federal law and state law, it is illegal to purchase a firearm with the intention of giving it to somebody else. It's called a straw purchase. And there's no differentiation if it's to a family member or an acquaintance or anything like that. So there is a legal question as to the legality of that for somebody to purchase a firearm and give it to a child. There's even now a legal question as to whether it's legal for somebody to lend a firearm to somebody under 21 for their use. And so all of those questions need to be answered. They were all asked through the legislative process, and the legislature came up with no responses to those. And they basically said, we don't give a rat's patootie what the impact of this is. We don't want anybody under the age of 21 to buy any guns or gain access to any guns. And so we're going to pass this bill, and the governor signed it. So wow. This is something that's going to have to be resolved in the courts.
So what else did he?
I got two more things.
Oh, do it. What else did he sign? Yeah. I'm almost afraid to ask, but go ahead.
Well, the one that he vetoed, another one that he vetoed, and we're very grateful that he did, was SB 1177 by, again, Senator Portantino. This bill would have limited the purchase of any gun of any type to only one per month. Right now, you can only purchase one handgun per month in the state of California. You can buy a gun, and 30 days later, you can buy another handgun, and 30 days later, you can. Well, they were trying to put long guns into that category so that if you buy one shotgun, then you cannot buy a handgun for 30 days or a rifle for another 30 days. And the governor vetoed this law, and basically, there's no indication that crime comes from people buying more than one guns or winning more than one guns at a Friends of the NRA dinner, a gun owners banquet, or California Waterfowl Association banquet. They win more than one gun, and there's no nexus between buying more than one gun and being able to get them all within 30 days.
Well, of
Now,
course not. So I want to just make sure I understand
Sure.
that before you go on, because that law did not pass.
Correct.
And as we are speaking, it is still legal to buy more than one long gun per month in the state of California.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is
Because
absolutely correct.
I think you're getting another call. You disappeared on me again.
No, I just said low battery.
Oh, low
There we
battery.
go.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. I don't want to.
No, we're good.
Are you
We're good.
going to make it?
I have enough.
Okay.
I think we're going to make it.
Okay. And if we don't, and you go away, I'll apologize to you later. And you had one more. So now we know that we can
Yes.
buy more than one long gun per month. That's important. I
Yes.
wanted to make sure we got
Yes.
that. Go ahead.
The last bill that I want to talk about is SB 1346 by Senator Hannibeth Jackson from the Santa Barbara area. And this is just an example of how silly the legislature has gotten in considering legislation and passing legislation. In the state of California, the Attorney General has declared and written opinions that owning a bump stock in the state of California is illegal based on existing California statutes. So Senator Jackson decided that we wanted to make it illegaler. So she sponsored a bill that specifically makes the bump stock unlawful to own and possess and purchase and transfer in the state of California. It's already illegal. I would venture to guess that there are no bump stocks in the state of California because they've been illegal for quite some time. And so they passed this bill, and the governor signed it. So he's a part of this belief that,
It's not illegal enough, apparently.
Yeah, it's not illegal enough. We're going to make it more illegal. And Joel, that this is what they do. They put all of their emphasis on gun control and they make it sound like they are making California safer with the passage of all these laws, when in fact nothing can be further from the truth. This is all show and no go, and that is what the legislature is doing these days. So we expect that more legislation will be sponsored in years to come along these lines, making things that are already illegal more illegal, or as I like to say, illegaler.
Well, there's hope, I think, in the long run, with the judiciary being filled by the president with conservative constitutionalist judges that actually look at what the Constitution says and what it was meant when it was written. And certainly now that the Supreme Court has been altered a little bit to lean more toward that direction, perhaps the Supreme Court will start listening to some Second Amendment cases. My hope is that California and other states like it will be dragged into the Constitution kicking and screaming, in no other way. But unfortunately, that takes a long, long time. With that in mind, I sent you a link to a headline that I found, which I thought was very interesting, that just came out today. It said, Louisiana is now involved in what could be a landmark gun rights case at the Supreme Court. What's happened is the Attorney General in Louisiana has written an amicus brief, along with 16 other states that have joined it, them being Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Georgia, Idaho, Kansas, Michigan, Montana, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Texas, Utah, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. And then their attorney generals, along with Mississippi and Kentucky, have all submitted amicus briefs either together or separately in this case, which challenges the draconian requirements in the state of New York for concealed carry. Have you seen that in the headlines?
Yes, I have. And actually, Gun Owners Foundation, our legal foundation, and Gun Owners of America just filed an amicus brief also in this lawsuit. And it is very, very important. The case is the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus the City of New York. And it deals with CCWs and legally transporting firearms within the state of New York and the City of New York and their draconian laws, which are contrary to federal law. but they don't care.
Well, and you mentioned
enforce them
transporting.
anyway.
My understanding is in the city of New York, you can't even take the gun out of the house except to take it to the range or to take it like to a gun shop to get it fixed or something like that. I mean, it's very, very limited as to actually transporting that firearm out of your house for any purpose. Isn't that correct?
That is absolutely correct. But what's included in this thing is that, let's say that somebody from the state of Georgia, they're living in Atlanta, and they're going to go to Vermont to hunt moose or something like that, and they travel through the city of New York under the Firearms Owners Protection Act, the McClure-Volkmer bill. It is legal for them to keep those firearms locked in their trunk or in a locked container and travel through the city of New York on their way up to Vermont to legally use their firearms. That is federal law. Some fly into the city of New York in order to go to a hunting or shooting destination in the East Coast. So New York is not their destination. It is on the way. This federal law protects them transporting those firearms through the city of New York. Well, the NYPD and the city fathers and mothers of New York don't like that. So what they do is anytime they find somebody who's transporting a firearm, whether legal or not under federal law and protected, they confiscate those firearms and they make you go through a judicial process in order to get them back. That is wrong. It's unconstitutional. And that just shows how arrogant the city of New York is with regards to Second Amendment rights. So this is a very important case. Now, our amicus brief didn't concentrate on those issues in particular. What we concentrated on is the fact that the Second Court of Appeals ruled the laws from New York City to be constitutional or legal. And in fact, we are challenging the fact that the Second Circuit used rationale with balancing tests that were specifically they were prohibited from using under the Heller and McDonald decisions. Justice Scalia specifically said that states cannot use these balancing tests, and judges cannot use these balancing tests to try to justify these gun control measures that they're trying to pass. We are challenging those specifics where the Second Court of Appeals actually used their own previous precedent in order to justify overruling the precedent of the United States Supreme Court. And it is a very important case, Joel, because the next case that makes it up to the Supreme Court will deal with this issue of balancing tests. And if the Supreme Court rules that courts cannot use balancing tests, that they have to use the text and the historical context of the Second Amendment to decide any issues with regards to Second Amendment rights, will invalidate many of the laws, the gun control laws nationwide. They cannot stand any scrutiny to that kind of an examination. So this is a very, very important case.
Now, is this case currently with the Supreme Court, or is it on its way to the Supreme Court?
No, these amicus that were filed were asking the Supreme Court to grant certiorari and hear this case. They say that this is a very important case on the Second Amendment and that they should accept it as one of the cases that they will hear and rule on. So this is a very important thing. So
we need to be praying and keeping our fingers crossed that the Supreme Court actually accepts this case and hears it, particularly now that we have Gorsuch and Kavanaugh on the bench. Absolutely. And throw in some crossed toes, too, just for good measure. Cross everything. Absolutely. There's I want to show you a story that was in the LA Times, I think, that is entitled "Authorities Seize 111 Illegally Owned Firearms in LA County Sweep." Now, as I skimmed through the story while I was getting my stack of things ready for you, it looks as if this is the prohibited persons list, and the Department of Justice going out and finding these people and banging on their door and taking their guns. And I don't know, that seems to be the case, but I'm wondering if you have any comment about this process and what California is doing with regard to this.
The armed prohibited person system is a program that we have here in the state of California that actually, although it's being misused or used with great flaws, actually goes after people who have been identified as criminals who have in the past legally purchased firearms. So they have guns registered to them. Now, once you commit a disqualifying misdemeanor or a felony, you lose your gun rights. Now, the state doesn't know if these people complied with the law and got rid of their firearms. So what they do is they take the purchase lists and they bounce it off the database of people that have been convicted of one of these crimes. And then that gives them a list of potential lawbreakers. Now, in the state of California, we have a backlog of over 10,000 cases where they know of people who have broken the law and have registered guns in their name. Now, we have criticized them that they have spent more time trying to make it illegal for law-abiding citizens to purchase and use firearms, and haven't spent very little time on actually going after criminals. This is a case where they're actually going after criminals, and they're finding some level of success in doing that. Crime control, we don't oppose crime control. We oppose gun control because gun control is always focused on the law-abiding citizens. Crime control focuses on criminals. Real investigations have to occur. Now, you'll notice if you read this article that 111 illegally owned firearms were seized, and it was, I believe the number was in the 30s, the number of actual criminals they found had possession of firearms that they should not have had. Out of several thousand investigations that they committed, they found a handful of them who had not complied with the law and gotten rid of their guns.
Well, and to your point, if you don't mind me just interjecting, it's
Sure.
interesting to me that I think there's only about 15 or 20 or less agents that are working on this stuff. But they seem to be able to spend millions and millions and millions making me a criminal, but they can't spend extra money to go take the guns away from the criminals that have them.
Oh, they're spending the money. The legislature specifically gave them $24 million in order to bring this list up to date. In other words, conduct the investigations, look to see if any of these people that have been convicted of a crime have complied with the law and divested themselves of their firearms through a legal process. And they squandered the $24 million. They still have a huge backlog. They've trained officers to become a part of this armed prohibited persons task force. We hear stories of people who have been trained and recruited into the system. They participate a little bit and they say, you know what? This is bogus. We're going after a lot of people that have complied by the law, and it's wasting a lot of time. You know, they show up. They don't show up, you know, in a uniform and they knock on the door. They show up in SWAT team uniforms with bulletproof vests and machine guns, with black SUVs and lights and sirens going on when they make a lot of these investigations. And instead of having the 25 officers that they were supposed to have, they have about 15 or 16 because many of them have transferred out of the unit. Some of them have just left. Because they only have 15, they have to team up with local law enforcement officials in order to conduct these investigations. We do know for a fact that in many counties in the state of California, a lot of the sheriffs say, you know what, this is not a program that has, where they've done their proper homework, and you're not going to put our officers in danger going after these when you find that the vast majority of these investigations turn up to be a false lead.
It's a big waste. It's a waste of time and waste of resources, and it puts the local officers in jeopardy. It doesn't make any sense.
That's correct. That's correct.
Now, I wanted to go back to your PAC real quick, if I may, because I pulled up the website here, which I think is kind of cool, because as we look at state and local races and federal races, I noticed that in the middle, as you can see on the screen here, there's ballot measures on the left. There's Gun Owners of California Endorsed Candidates in the middle. And then, of course, there's an opportunity to support Gun Owners of California, which everyone should be doing. And as I said, I'm going to write you a check when we get done with this and stick it in the mail to you for $100 because I want to help. But this is a great resource right here to find out which candidates are pro Second Amendment and which ones should be supported. For example, I have contributed to Randy Vopel's campaign, and then also I'm getting ready to contribute a little bit of money to Brian Jones' campaign. I don't know them personally. I have met them, but I know their record, and they are very pro-Second Amendment, both of them. And if we're looking at these candidates and supporting the ones that are pro-Second Amendment, that is very, very positive. And it takes a little homework, but it's better than just showing up at the polls and not knowing what we're talking about. I looked at those lists you have there, and they're quite exhaustive. So if you're looking for recommendations on who to vote for, please go to Gun Owners of California. I will put the link to that resource in the description so that you can find it. And one more thing, Sam, we talked about before we started the show, I wanted to mention to you because I know your battery in your phone is dying. Hopefully you'll be right along to do it. Local races are the ones that people ignore so often. All politics are local. I want to give you an example, and I'd love to hear your response. Now, my wife and I, as you know, we own our home and a couple of rental properties, and we're not super rich, but I'm just trying to be able to retire at some point, and I'm an old guy. And so one of our properties is in the city of El Cajon, and the El Cajon mayor is a gentleman named Bill Wells, who has done a really good job, in my opinion, in the city of El Cajon, cleaning it up a little bit, and they've got some new stuff there. You got a couple of new hotels and like that, and trying to make it nicer. And then, in addition to that, we have also the city council members who are running. So Bill is running for re-election. And then we've got city council members who are running for this, that, or the other thing. And in the process of looking at the city council members, if you go Google them, you find out the most interesting things. So, for example, I got this guy. There you go. I got this flyer the other day. Now, I knew about this guy because he's all over the news. This is a gentleman named Ben Kalasho. And Ben Kalasho, you'll notice the headline at the top of this flyer is "The Terrifying Truth About Ben Kalasho." Okay, well, here's some things about Ben Kalasho. This guy's running for city council. I dropped my thing here. Hang on a second. I didn't get it. This guy's running for city council. He has recently been convicted of fraud. I believe it was workers' compensation fraud that he was convicted of. And then, in addition to that, he's got several, at least two that I'm aware of, lawsuits going on with him, I think, regarding sexual harassment and fraud. He has faked nude pictures of people and posted them online. He's been accused by a beauty pageant participant or contestant of having offered the contestant the crown for the pageant in exchange for sexual favors. This guy's a mess. And if you look at the images on this thing, you can see the signs people have held. There's one that says, Ben Kalasho, do El Cajon a favor, resign. Another one says, protect our girls from Ben Kalasho. There's a picture of him on the bottom. You can see right there in his orange jumpsuit. Gee, I wonder where he got that. Wow. And then they included on the other side some actual photos. I thought these were Photoshopped. They were not. These are actual photos of Mr. Kalasho. Now, am I bringing this up for the purpose of bashing Ben Kalasho? Yeah, probably, because he needs to be bashed. How in the world a guy like that could be running for public office escapes me. But the point is that if we don't pay attention to our local city council, local mayor races, and that kind of stuff, this guy's trying to get on the farm team for Congress. This is the farm team for state assembly and state senate. This is the farm team for United States Congress, United States Senate. That's what these jokers do. They run for, mayor. They run for city council of a small town. Then the next thing you do, they're running for state assembly or state senate or dog catcher or whatever. And the next thing, I don't know if you elect dog catchers anymore, or they're running for some other public office or county supervisor or whatever. And then next thing you know, they're in the state assembly, they're in the state senate, and then they're running for Congress. And then they run for Senate. And now they're there, and we can't get rid of them. And you wonder where all these knuckleheads come from and wastes of space that end up politicians on the federal level. Well, here's where they come from. They're your local guy with the idiotic hat. They're your local joker who's been in and out of jail 32 times. They're your local joker that locally nobody can stand, but somehow, because the majority of the citizens of the city don't pay attention, they get elected. Comments?
Again, you're another gold star. You're gonna be wearing a lot of gold, but by the time this interview is over, man, the farm club, the farm team are the local elections. That is why citizens should always be concerned about people's perspective on the Second Amendment, whether it's dog catcher, Board of Education, city council, boards of supervisors, any elected position, because from here is where the future candidates for Assembly and Senate come from. Governor and constitutional officers, they many of them have this local experience. And the left, those that are hate the Second Amendment, the Constitution in general, they have learned a long time ago that they need to put their people in place, put them in these lower offices where people don't scrutinize what they believe on all of these important issues, in order to give them some experience, in order to run them in for upper office in the future. Sometimes they place them in foundations or labor unions or other types of organizations, but in local office is one of the key places that the anti-gunners place their future candidates for office. That's why we should be doing the same thing. We should hold all of these candidates feet to the fire, ask them what they believe on the Second Amendment, and if they say this office doesn't have anything to do with the Second Amendment and those issues, then they're not telling you the truth. Every elected office can influence the Second Amendment, and we need to know ahead of time where these people stand so that we have them on record when they choose to run for another office.
Well, and how many city councils in how many cities has organizations like Gun Owners of California had to sue into oblivion or threatened to sue because they pass anti-Second Amendment and unconstitutional city ordinances? I mean, a list is incredibly long.
Dozens and dozens. And thankfully, we have our friends.
Oh, I think we may have lost Sam permanently. I don't know.
I apologize.
Oh, no, that's quite all right.
Hang.
That's all right. You're back. Anyway.
We have, through our partnership with the California Rifle and Pistol Association, the National Rifle Association, have challenged many of these laws that have been sponsored by cities and counties that would limit the Second Amendment, either by banning the ability for people to have legal gun stores in their communities, or shooting ranges, or outdoor shooting recreational opportunities. So yes, this is a very, very important place where right now you might not think, oh, they don't have any influence on the Second Amendment. I like them on this and that other issue. Once they're elected, they have an ability to affect the Second Amendment. Therefore, it is incumbent upon us to be responsible voters, responsible citizens, and make sure we know where they stand on this very important issue.
Well, to give you an example, I mean, like I said yesterday, I think, or the day before, the San Diego County Board of Supervisors voted in favor of some sort of county ordinance to restrict shooting in the area around, in the south part of the county, out in the boonies around the South Bay Rod and Gun Club. And I haven't looked into the issue as deeply as I'd like because I've been teaching all week, but that may affect the South Bay Rod and Gun Club's ability to stay in business and exist. And that thing has been there forever and a day. I mean, it's astounding. I mean, I remember that being there when I was a boy, and I'm in my 60s. So that's how long that range has been there. And who are the people who are in charge of all that? The San Diego County Board of Supervisors, a local election, which is why I'm going to tell you, if you live in the city of El Cajon, vote for Bill Wells. The guy is a great, stellar guy. He's a conservative guy. He's a business guy, and he's pro-Second Amendment, owned a gun store for a while, along with another gentleman who, by the way, is on our Board of Education, the fellow who owns the gun store, which is kind of cool. And if you're in the area where this joker right here is running for office in your part of El Cajon, do yourself a huge favor. They can't get him to resign, even though the sign says do El Cajon a favor and resign. Vote this guy out and vote for the other guy. This dude is a criminal. Look, I believe in the premise in the state of California as much as I do in the United States of innocent until proven guilty. So there are lots of people who are accused of things. I mean, we had Brett Kavanaugh accused of a lot of things. I think he was innocent, and I think it was all bogus. Personally, that's my opinion. I'm sure I'll make somebody mad. Well, get over it. I'm making people mad all the time. We have Duncan D. Hunter, who's been accused of some campaign contribution impropriety. I don't know whether he did it or not. I have no idea. But he has the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. So he's running for office. Okay. If he's proven guilty, he can be booted out of office. But right now, he's running for office. I like the guy personally, and I think he's done a good job. And so he probably, if I was in his district, which I'm not, I would vote for him because innocent until proven guilty. This dude is on probation. He's already been proven guilty of fraud. That speaks to his character. So when you see this other stuff, you go, okay, do you want that character to be in city office, state office, federal office, county office? The answer is absolutely not. So look at your local races and take a hard look at them. Google them. I mean, well, this joker, it's really interesting. You look this guy up. There's his name. If you ever want to, look him up. Google him or Bing him or whatever you want to do. You can't find anything nice about the guy. It's all this criminal stuff. It's all these news stories about what a interesting piece of work this gentleman is. I have a feeling if you look up your local politicians, you'll find something similar. Judges, by the way, same thing. You got to do the research on judges. If you don't, hi, George, the next thing you know, you've got some liberal Superior Court judge, and they're in there for a long, long time, and you're stuck with them. I don't know, Sam, do you guys don't, it's hard to score judges, isn't it?
It is very difficult to score judges. Every election, we score 100 legislative candidates, all 80 assemblymen and assemblywomen, and 20 of the 40 state senators. And that's a big job in and of itself. And then we score the constitutional officers. And when you add the thousands and thousands of judges, it becomes even more difficult. Now, again, our friends over at the CRPA, they have undergone and instituted a judicial program where they are scoring specific judges. And if anybody wants to know if a judge in their area is on that list, they can go to the crpa.org website to find out. And secondly, here in the state of California, we have the all-important office of Attorney General, the chief law enforcement officer of the state of California. We have Justice Stephen Bailey, retired Superior Court judge from El Dorado County, who's running for Attorney General against Xavier Becerra, who is a
piece of work.
Yes. Thank you. You saved me from saying things that wouldn't have been very nice. But
I was trying to save you from swearing, brother. I get it. I'm tempted to do it myself. I understand. Well, we also have John Cox, who's running for, and I heard on. I've been looking for some document on this. I haven't been able to find a story on it or a poll or anything, but I think I was listening to Rush Limbaugh the other day, and he indicated that John Cox is only about 5 or 6 points behind at this point, behind Gavin Newsom. Well, that's a lot closer than a lot of people think it is, and I think that's a turnout question is what that is. That's not an issue of, that's an issue of if we turn out and vote for John Cox, we might avoid the weapon of mass destruction where Second Amendment is concerned and everything else, Gavin Newsom.
I see the situation building up in California, much like the last presidential election with Hillary Clinton. My dream and my hope is that Gavin Newsom is the next Hillary Clinton, where it is expected that he's going to win. Everybody is saying that he's going to win. And surprise, surprise, President Trump won the election. And I think that Cox is building a campaign that mirrors that possibility. And the fact that Cox is within 5 points of Gavin Newsom is spectacular, and it is a turnout issue. We need our
nobody even ever thought he would get anywhere near that close. I mean, everybody thought it would be a 30-point, 40-point swing.
Absolutely, that is absolutely the case. But his message resonates. We know he's a defender of the Second Amendment. We know he's a conservative. We know he's fiscally very conscious and would be probably the best thing that ever happened to the state of California as far as a fiscal conservative is concerned. So it is very important. Don't give up. Don't listen to the naysayers that say Newsom is going to win and he's going to spring up these Newsomvilles all over the state of California, these new little towns that are going to crop up of homeless people that are magically voting in the elections in order to get him elected. The homelessness that he helped to create when he was mayor of San Francisco and as lieutenant governor, he's done nothing to address the important issues of the state of California except run around as a slick politician trying to run on gun control and fool people full voters in the state of California. So John Cox is the real deal. I had an opportunity to sit down with him for several hours, have a long, in-depth conversation. He is the real deal. He is the kind of guy that we want as governor. Thoughtful, very intelligent, is systematic, and knows his stuff. He knows the Constitution, and he knows what the state of California needs in order to right this crazy ship that we are on.
Well, Sam, thank you very much. I've held you so long. I'm just looking at the clock here, and I realize we've been talking for a little over an hour, and I apologize for keeping this long. I know you've got a busy day ahead of you, and you spend a lot of your day actually in the halls of the state house and state legislator pulling. In fact, I'm surprised you have any hair, because you probably pull your hair out on a regular basis. But thank you very much for being part of the show. It looks like you briefly went away again. I'm gonna say so long to you. Have a wonderful day before your phone dies, and thank you again very much for being part of the show. I really do appreciate it, Sam. You're a jewel, and you're a good friend, and you're a tremendous advocate for the Second Amendment. If you are not a member of Gun Owners of California, you need to be. Thank you again, Sam. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for being part of the show.
It's an honor and a pleasure. I really enjoyed speaking with you and sharing things with you. And frankly, you make me better, brother. Thank you.
Well, I don't know. You're looking pretty good today. You know, the whole cell phone thing seems to work. You're right. The camera's a lot better than the other one, so it works out really well.
Yeah, well, I got to make sure that the battery's fully charged next time.
And you're not getting phone calls like that. Yeah, have a great week, Sam. Go. Thank you so very much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for watching. I apologize. We went really, really long here, but I'm going to leave the entire interview here for you because I think it's a very valid one, and it's a good one to watch. And I realize we went quite a long time. So if you're still with me at the end of this, I want to thank you personally for hanging in there. Please, please, please vote. Stay involved. Vote in your local elections. Look up these local jokers so you don't end up with some knucklehead like this idiot in your town or your city, and you don't set this guy up to be part of the farm team to end up on the state legislature or the United States Congress or heaven forbid President of the United States or something like that. We got to avoid that, and we start out with the guys and the gals who are running locally. So let's keep an eye on that too. And again, if you're not supporting Gun Owners of California, please do that. I'm going to write I'm a member, but I'm going to write an extra $100 check to them and send it to them today. If you can do that and help them out, that would be awesome. Thank you very much again for watching. Have a wonderful week, and please be safe.